Are you a new Catholic leader or entrepreneur who's used to doing all the things, but now you've got a team and you have no idea how to let go? Are you tired of missing sporting events or school plays because you have double booked yourself yet? And do you find yourself scrambling all the time because you are spread way too thin? And do you know you have leadership skills, but you can't seem to apply them with your team? Today on the podcast, I'm so excited to be joined by Kristina Schmitt, and we're going to be talking about what a new Catholic leader needs to master. That is what is coming up today on the Possibility Mom Live. As you can hear by my voice, I am struggling with a terrible cold. But I was so excited for this conversation that I was like, I cannot. I know this will give me so much energy. And so right after this podcast, I will be going right back to resting, right back to my protocol of a lot of vitamin D. It is beautiful here where I live today. And so I'm just spending as much time as I can in the sunshine, taking it easy. It's been an interesting time of taking it easy. Like I struggle with taking it easy. I love productivity and I actually genuinely love my work. It's an interesting blend for me. Let me know in the comments if you feel this way too. It's an interesting challenge, I'll say, where I do love to relax and I do love to just like vegetate. Yesterday I was so ill that I really did spend the entire day in bed, and that was so nice. But work actually energizes me a lot. So I find I can actually feel worse when I'm not doing things that are engaging or exciting, or again, things that bring me a lot of motivation, things that just get me excited. So it's an interesting tension I often feel between resting and like important resting, especially when you're ill, and just, doing things that I know are exciting and bring me energy. So that is why I was like, I could reschedule this podcast, but I am so excited about this topic. One of the things that's been impressed upon me very much in my new position at the Guiding Star Project as president is the skills that are required when someone becomes a leader. I would say that I would consider myself a fairly new leader. Entrepreneurship, I was leading myself, and yes, a team of contractors, and I've had staff, I've had, VAs, I've had members of my team over the last few years, certainly, but they were always more of like a contract type of position. Like I wasn't having a weekly meeting with them. At the Guiding Star Project, it's completely different. We've got regular meetings. We've got many different constituents and people we are rallying and that we need to support. And it has been an interesting revelation to me. If any of the questions that I read at the beginning of this podcast resonated with you, I really want to encourage you to pay attention to today's podcast. I do want to just one thing very, very briefly on is Harrison Butker's commencement address. So before we get into Catholic leadership, what new leaders need to master, I do really want to just very, very briefly talk about this commencement address, because unless you have been off the internet for the last few weeks, this address at Benedictine College by Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker has just all over the internet, secular and Catholic audiences alike. People have not enjoyed some of the things that he said. And on this particular, just briefly, right now, I'm not going to pick apart there's enough on the internet picking apart every line of his speech. But the thing that I do want to talk about is the justification of our life's choices. Why I think people are so upset. And I mean, secular people. I saw tons of women who run online multi-million-dollar, businesses online. Multiple of them, like taking $100 bills and being like, Harrison Butker, like, look at me, I'm making millions of dollars from home. Like just so mad, using a lot more colorful language than I just use. And at the heart of it, I think that's like underneath all of that, underneath some people's frustration and outright rage, it's people justifying the choices they've made in their own life. And here's what I want to say just really briefly about that, is that we have got to come to a place in everything in our life where at the end of the day, we are happy. Like we're at peace, or maybe not even happy, but we're at peace with the decision we made. Because justifying our existence to everyone else is exhausting. And it's childhood wounds, childhood trauma, so many different things play into this piece of why we feel like we have to justify our existence, and you've really talked about that, at length on this podcast. I've talked about my own journey with internal family systems therapy and understanding the role of the central nervous system. We do things without even being conscious of it. And I think this is just a perfect snowball now into our conversation today, because what I find in myself and in many of the leaders that I work with is that these justifications of existence can, again, really just sneakily sneak in there into the way that you lead your team. And so this awareness, this ability to be honest with yourself, to ask the Lord for more humility, for more docility, is really, really important. And so I'm just so excited. Everybody, welcome to the podcast, the beautiful Kristina Schmitt. Kristina, welcome.
Thank you. So excited to be
How
here.
are you? I'm so excited that you are here. This is the cutest shirt on you. I love it.
Oh, thank you. It seems to be my uniform, I think.
Oh. Sometimes you just need that one shirt that looks good on camera, that fits well, is easy to wear. Alrighty, Kristina, for anyone who does not know you and your work, will you please introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Kristina Schmitt. I help Catholic leaders stop getting caught up in the minutia of all of the work and start leading their teams. And the reason I do that is because I want them to be successful at work and at home. And I loved your comments on the Harrison Butker thing, because it just feeds into everything I believe, because knowing who we are and knowing our vocation, our God-given vocation, is critical to figure out where we're going, to arrange our lives, our work, and everything just around where God wants us to go.
Okay, so 100% and amen and amen. These questions are actually off of your website, and I want to read them again because they resonate with me. I think they would resonate with a lot of our listeners. They resonate with some of the leaders that I work with. Okay, so I'm gonna read them again. Are you a new Catholic leader or entrepreneur who's used to doing all the things, but now you have a team that's hard to let go? Are you tired of missing your kids' sporting events because you have had to be at work in case something goes wrong? Do you find yourself scrambling to find coverage because you double booked something again? Do you know your leadership skills, but you struggle to apply them with your team? Just the first one for me is the one that really to my gut. I'm like, oh, and it's something I've had to just learn. I think being a mom at 10 has forced me to learn that one a little bit by myself. But talk to us about the state of what you are seeing in Catholic leaders, and why is this topic of importance to you?
So I'll start with the second question, actually. It's important to me because so many of those questions were me. They were me when I was a leader. I used to lead a large automotive manufacturing plant, and I found myself, I was just running all the time. I felt I had to give 150% at work, and I would come home and like, just come home and just have nothing left. And I knew, like, I had so much leadership training, and I'm like, I know all the right things to do, but for some reason, I couldn't put it all together and make it work in real life. And there was just this missing piece. And so I see this so much with leaders. I see it with entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs, because you start in this like hustle. You've got to hustle. And there is, like, in the first couple of years of starting a business, you're scrambling, you're scrappy, you're just doing all these things to be successful. And sometimes that's where you are, but it can't be forever. When it's forever, you go, ugh. And like, that's burnout. That's complete burnout. And so at some point, you have to say, okay, the hustle is done. Now I need to get this working in a consistent and stable and way that my team is able to understand what's happening. My team is able to grab the ball. I'm going to continue the football reference, grab the ball and run and take it down the field without me there pushing them or running in front of them to show them the way, because we can't be there as leaders all the time. Particularly when I was in manufacturing, it was a 24/7 all the time. You can't be there all the time to answer every question. And you can't hold everybody's hand, because you've probably got 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 reports. And so you can't hold everybody's hand, because you've got stuff you've got to do too. So you've got to be able to say, here it is, and there you go. And it's hard. And it takes some learning, some learning about ourselves first.
I'm reading a book right now by Les McKeown, and he talks about the ability for people to make decisions at any level of the organization. Like, he says, you should be able to walk into a meeting and not have a sense of who the like CEO is. And I thought, I remember reading that and being like, ooh, I'm so curious what someone would say at some of my meetings. You know, would they be able to say the same thing? And the point he was trying to make is that people make decisions effectively, but also at the level they're at, so that you're not constantly having to look to the leader. And I just thought that was very, very astute. Okay, so let's talk about that entrepreneur, or in my case, like, I'm moving into a new leadership position, having never been doing that before. What is the first thing that these, Catholic leaders need to tackle?
So the very first thing is, it's an awareness of themselves. And I know it might sound like, oh man, I don't want to do that. That's hard. But it's understanding who you are. Where are your strengths? Where are your God-given gifts? And where are you going to struggle? Because when we understand who we are, we can stop feeling guilty about the things that we're not good at. God did not make us good at everything, and he did that for a reason. He did that because we're meant to work together, and we're meant to work in unity, community with our teams, with our home teams, our work teams, all of those teams in life.
You introduced me to the framework of the working genius. And I remember when I read mine, I was like, this makes so much sense, and this whole awareness and permission and lack of guilt and more compassion. For example, I am big into galvanizing and enablement. I love cheerleading people on, being at the front row, like, woohoo, here we go. And like, now here's the steps to move. Like, here, I'm going to help you at every step of the way. I get frustrated by tenacity. So like, the grueling, get it done, get across the finish line. And I remember when you showed me the widget, I was like, tenacity gets it across the finish line, So I have Well, but tenacity gets it across the finish line. And I remember just feeling so much freedom when I was able to address that. Here's some tenacity. Are you ready, Miss Tenacity? You nurse with a lot of tenacity here. So, and it gave me so much freedom when I realized that here's where I'm strong and here's where I'm not. So now how do we, do this as a team? So why don't you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So the 6 types of working genius is, we call it 80% productivity model, 20% personality assessment. And so it is about how work gets done. And work gets done through these 6 stages of work. And of the 6, we're all going to have 2 that we're really, really good at. They bring us joy. We love doing them. We could do them and not eat all day. Like, we would just love it. And it'll bring us so much energy. We have 2 that are what we call competencies. So yeah, you can do it. Doesn't bring me joy, but if I do it too long, I'm going to burn out. And then we have those 2 that we call frustrations. And these are the 2 that very quickly bring us frustration. So we either will avoid them altogether. I have the frustration of wonder. So sometimes I really hate sitting and contemplating and also struggle with tenacity. So I just avoid any of that stuff. But those are things we'll avoid them, or when we start doing them, we just throw our hands up quickly and we're like, oh, I just can't handle this sort of stuff right now, or this is why I don't do this. So all those little frustrating things.
Yeah,
so
100%.
when we know which 2 bring us joy, and when we know that's where we should be spending our time, then we can say, oh, well, I can delegate these lovely things over here. And the really cool part is that there are people that love those things that you hate and those things that you avoid. And so it just makes it that much easier. So for me, I used to feel guilty offloading certain tasks because I was like, these are awful. These people are busy too. How can I ask them to do these things? But in reality, those people probably liked them, or at least liked them more than I did. So it's freeing.
In both the organizations I run, so in the Possibility Mom, Stephanie Donahue is high tenacity, which is incredible. So she perfectly complements my frustration of tenacity. And similarly, in Guiding Star Project, one of our team members at the executive level is high tenacity. So these things are just so important to have awareness around. And again, the lack of guilt. Okay, so you are a member of my mastermind. We are so blessed by your presence in the mastermind. But I recently asked you a question, and I loved your answer to it. I asked you, why does any of this matter? Like, what is at stake if a Catholic leader doesn't figure some of this out? And what happens when a Catholic leader understands how to work in their strengths, how to actually lead, how to let go of control? What is at stake, and what do we have to gain?
So these geniuses, these are our God-given gifts. These are the gifts that God gave us to bring his word to the world and to bring about our vocations or our missions in life. And so by using them, we are doing God's work. So take it the opposite end, to not use them, now you're not using God's work. Or if you're punishing yourself for not being good at this other thing, you're not allowing other people to do their God-given work and their mission. When everybody on a team gets to operate in their God-given gifts, and we're all working towards our God-given vocations, and these are those vocations of being moms, of being dads and husbands and priests and all these things, when we put that first and we design our work around supporting that, now we're really doing God's work. And so just imagine an entire team working together. We all know the gifts that God gave us that we need to use to do his work. And we're working towards that vocation to support that vocation. There's joy to be brought into our lives. There's healing to be brought into our lives. There is the mission of our work, our business, and the mission of God to be brought into the world. And it's just beautiful. It is absolutely gorgeous.
And I think what happens when we're in that beauty, when we're in that abundance, it overflows into our homes, right? And that was the thing that you know, in addition to everything you just shared, you also shared with me that people would be happy at home, you know? Okay, so super random side note. I've been so sick, right? So I spent the entire day in bed yesterday and then a good chunk of the day before, okay? And I was like, I can't read. So, and screens were bothering me. So I put on a TV show and I just listened to it. I know you live in Canada now, but I don't know if you lived in Canada when you were a kid. Did you watch Degrassi Junior High?
I did. I was close enough to the border that we got it.
Okay. So there's this show for my American listeners, although many people know Drake. And so he became very famous, or Degrassi High or Degrassi Junior High ended up becoming known with Drake. So I feel like Degrassi got a little bit of more worldwide stage. But in the 80s and 90s, right, when I was a kid, there was this show called Degrassi Junior High. Oh my word. It was like the grittiest show. Like I watched it when I was curled up in bed and I was like, how was I ever allowed to watch this as a kid? Because it's super mature. It's super gritty. It's super like I should not have been watching this. And this was marketed to young, you know, children. Anyway, I digress. My point is it was so gritty and it showed the reality of families and the dynamic of families when the dad was coming home so exhausted, so grumpy, and you know, just distracted parents, very frustrated. And I know it's a TV show, but obviously I'm sure everyone listening can think of an example in their lives, or maybe it's even their own example where, or maybe it's even yourself. Maybe you're listening to this and you're like, I'm that person. I come home either out of my office, coming home, so to speak, or I come home from the office drained and kind of miserable and not giving my children my best. And that's what I think your work is so important. Why I think your work is so important, because can we imagine if parents were coming home ready to greet their kids with energy, ready to greet their spouse with energy, and where this drain just isn't really happening? And that's what I find most compelling. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, it is about designing your work life around being able to support your real life, which is at home. I just really and truly believe gone are the days, and God should be the days where work is the first priority. It should never be the first priority. And it's just scary when it gets there because of this pull. Like I worked in automotive. I mean, it was like, if it wasn't my top 3 priorities, it was like, woo. So it got to the point where there was an expectation to be on call 24/7. You had to be ready to go all the time. And that's not realistic. That's not, and it drains and it pulls you from where we should be, because what happens when you leave work? When you leave a job, they find a replacement. When a parent leaves, there's no replacement for that parent. And so that is our number one job. That is what we need to be doing. And if we design our lives to support this crazy work, it's just backwards, and we're not going to be doing what's right. And so, yeah, I fully.
Oof. That was a good quote. That was a really good quote. You're always replaceable at work, but you're not replaceable at home. There's only one parent. Oh, that was good. You recently recorded a podcast, Kristina, on the healing power of work. Now, I have not yet had a chance to listen to it. Can you just give us a little bit of what you shared there? Because I find that very compelling.
Yes. So work should be healing. And this is maybe crazy to say, but think back biblical. Let's think about, we were designed to work. We were designed to work the earth, toil the earth. And so taking science into it, when we worked back then, it was very physical. And so the physical part of the exercise we got released endorphins and did all that stuff to heal us. And so our bodies are designed to heal that way. But now our work is very up here. But it's still meant to be healing. We were still designed to work. Our bodies under stress react the exact same way, whether it's mental stress or physical stress. We release the hormones to help us through, and then we have a healing hormone come through and heal us. That being said, it's the same thing with our work. So when we are in this work stress, we're in this workplace, and it can be, it should be healing for us. But so many times this culture, we have this workplace culture that is toxic and it's damaging. And when we feel like we're just being told what to do, and we're not giving our opportunity to use our gifts and our opportunity to do our best thing that we do every single day, now we have this toxic workplace culture, which is damaging and wounding. And so what I want to see is I want to see healing workplaces and get rid of these damaging, toxic workplaces, because it's that toxicity that will bleed into our home lives. When we don't get to work in our geniuses, when we're just do as I say, not as I do, because that is not great leadership. And when we can do that, then we can spill that grace over into our homes. We spend so much of our wait time at work that we need to be able to spill the grace into our days at home as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay. There's so many things I could talk about with you, but this is very personal. So you feel free to not answer this question, but you have been both a corporate person as well as now you are a full-time entrepreneur, right? Like, yeah, right? So what do you find, like, would you say that one is easier than the other in terms of the healing, or are they both equally as challenging? Like, what has your experience been?
In a corporate environment, it's hard to create that culture if you're not the leader, if you're not the top leader. The leader has so much control over how that culture looks, because even if they're not leading on purpose, people are still watching them and they're still leading. So it can become more difficult if you're not the top leader of the organization to create a healing culture. And it's actually, you're going to be, if it's bad, you're going to get sucked into the bad. If as an entrepreneur, and currently a solopreneur, when you're on your own, if you're not getting help, sometimes you can get yourself stuck. But that being said, because I've got freedom, because I've got all of that, like I've had so much healing in my work, because number one, I'm using my geniuses. When I was leading, I was living a lot in my competencies and frustrations. And that wore me out big time. Like I was so burnt out all the time because I was living in those areas and never got the opportunity, or never took the opportunity is probably a better way to say it. I never took the opportunity to use my strengths and use my geniuses, because when I was there, this didn't even exist, this working genius thing, but I didn't understand it. I didn't understand that by working in my geniuses, I could heal and recover from that tenacity for me, but that competency and frustration work, but that could heal me. But now in this entrepreneurial work, I've designed my work around being able to use my geniuses more and sandwiching my frustration work around genius work, which makes it a little easier, a little better. So I would say it's easier for me to heal in this environment. And it can be when you don't have the control over the leadership, and when the leadership isn't good above you, then it can be much harder to heal.
Oh, so good. You are creating, or you've created a brand new course for Catholic leaders. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's called the Cornerstone, How Leaders Are Made. So it is geared at new leaders, because I love working with new leaders. It makes me happy to see them take it on. But wouldn't even, it doesn't have to be like you just got the job, but it has to be, you feel like you just haven't gotten the traction you want. And so you can call yourself new, whether you've been in the role for a month or 5 years, you're still new if you feel like you haven't gotten the traction. So it's about getting them that identity piece first. So we start with the working genius and we understand who that person is, but we also dig into some Catholic portions of it. So a great leader, all great leaders are going to have healthy habits. And I say healthy, holy habits because we want to have our mind, body, and our spirit to be healthy. So we encourage that. So, what kind of fuel are we putting in our bodies? What are we doing to move our bodies to get that movement in? And what are we doing for our souls to make sure that we're refreshing it and growing it? Then we look at our vocations and we start understanding where's God telling us to go, making sure we're aligning all of that together. But then we stretch it into the team and we say, okay, who's on your team? And if you don't have a team, who should be on your team? And we design that around working genius and flow of our process work. And so we'll look at processes, we'll look at metrics as well. And so what a leader can get from this is almost their own handbook. Who am I? Who is my team? And how do we operate? And when you're looking at developing your team and growing your team, growing yourself, and moving everybody up to that next level, having this base in that is wonderful.
I am so excited. I'm going to be participating in this course myself, and so I can't wait. You have a webinar on May 28th, so this week. Tell us about what we could learn in this webinar.
So it is for anybody who thinks they might be heading towards or is already in burnout. So, a little bit of, yeah. So anybody who's feeling burnt out or feeling just tired, and I'm going to give you some steps that you can take to start moving out of it, to start understanding where you should be putting your energy and your time so that you're not just having all of the energy drained from you, and how to really prioritize, how to get your day in a better order so that you don't head into the burnout if you're not there, or if you're in it, you can recover and you can start getting better.
Oh, I love it. So I wasn't going to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it.
Okay.
For the naysayers out there, Kristina, so for the people who are like, Lisa, Kristina, this is all good, but I have just too much work that's not in my competencies. Like nobody else can do it. Like what, so the person who's saying, that's nice for you, but somebody still has to get all of this done. And there's a fair bit of that in my role in Guiding Star. Like there just is some things that are require tenacity that members of my team cannot do. So what happens when you have things that simply need to get done and you might not have the resources or the people? What do you do then?
So every job is a 6-letter job, meaning we all have to do work in our competencies and frustrations. I am on my own. I love being in the mastermind because I get support from G's and T's that I need. But we are all going to have to operate in those areas sometimes. The important part is that we have roles where we aren't doing it the majority of the time. And there are techniques and there are ways. So I shared a bit about how I sandwich tenacity work around my genius work. I also use that Pomodoro method when I have to do tenacity work. So I'm just doing like 25 minutes of work. And so having that little timer sitting right here so that I know that, okay, I've only got 13 minutes left. I can do this for 13 more minutes. I can do it. And so there are techniques around getting help. And as a leader, when we understand where our geniuses and frustrations lie, we can ask our team for help when we have to do those things. Or we give permission to our team to say, I need some help. I've got a ton of tenacity work to do. Can you come around and galvanize me a little bit extra today because I'm going to struggle? And it's a great conversation piece to have, to be able to just say, it's that vulnerability that you're opening up. It's that just open conversations and knowing it's okay to ask for help, because there are things that you're going to need help with in your role. So understanding you and your team.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. Kristina, is there anything else you want to add that you haven't had a chance to say today?
We've covered the gamut, I think, but I'm just so excited about this course. I'm excited to see the benefits that people are going to be able to take when they discover who they are, when they discover who their team is, and how they can support each other, because this is just the beginning of this beautiful community. So this community of businesses, this community of Catholic leaders that can be there to support one another and can help each other along and drive success. So
I'm so excited for you. And when I think about that potential, like when I think about the ripple effect and primarily on the home, like when I think about parents who come home and are able to be just happy and present as opposed to so drained, like that's just no fun. Like nobody wants that. Kids don't want that. Parents don't want that. Spouses don't want that. So I just love the idea. Like I can picture what the future looks like with lots of happy families, lots of impact, like high impact at work, and lots of great relationships in general, both at work and at home. Kristina, where can people go to learn more about you and your work?
So they can go to my website, which is CristinaSchmitt.ca. I'm also on Instagram at conveniently CristinaSchmitt.ca. So those are the best two. I've also got my own podcast, the Business Building Blocks podcast, if you'd like to listen to any of the episodes where I talk about Cornerstone program or healing at work or Working Genius a bit more in depth.
So good. And you can find the links for Kristina's Cornerstone program and her May 28th webinar on burnout wherever you are listening to this or watching this, either in the show notes or right below the video. Kristina, thank you so much for coming. And everybody, we will see you next time.
Thank you.